Welcome to the InStory Show. I'm Devorah Spilman, your host, and this is the summer season where we're focusing on empaths, highly sensitive people, and how to turn your sensitivities into your strengths. And today I am thrilled to welcome Darlene Sochin. Hi, Darlene.
Hi, Devorah. It's awesome to be here. Thank you.
Okay. You're welcome. All right, I'm going to read a little bit about Darlene, and then we will dive into her story. So Darlene has been a Reiki master and energy healer for over 13 years. She works with men and women who are seeking clarity and purpose and are determined to move out of old patterns and into their best vision of themselves. Darlene believes that awareness of that awareness of the energy that exists in our environment is the golden ticket to success and joy. I just love that so much. I had to read that part. I love your vision. I love where you're going with it, but I want to make you, like everyone else, go back to that time in your childhood when you were probably a beautifully sensitive soul, but nobody appreciated it.
My mother always appreciated it. You know, the Jewish mom always loving their children. So I do remember that everything made me cry. I was afraid of the entire world. And I remember specific days in kindergarten where I could not stop the crying. I couldn't stop the water faucet. And there was no particular reason for the crying. And the teachers didn't know what to do. And it would, one time it was just a pile of paper passed by. I was supposed to grab one and no one told me. And I just could not ever control my emotions. And oftentimes they would have to call someone in the school to come get me, to take me out of the classroom because my emotions were just so out of control. And my mother would always say, I don't understand. Nothing happened here. What are you so upset about? And I would not know. I had no idea. And then growing up, I experienced a lot of emotions that I couldn't put my finger on. And we often hear, oh, that's just being a girl. It's about, then I was a teenager and, oh, it's hormonal. And there was always some other reason put upon it. And my childhood was just mostly, I was very sensitive to everything, everyone around me, animals. I would see her animal and just cry for days. So I often spent a lot of time inside by myself in my room, creating my own reality, with my dolls and So my looking back, it sounds sadder than it actually was. But when I remember those particular emotional points, I do recall having to step out of the regular scene of what everybody else was doing. I had to spend a lot of time by myself.
And that is a very common story and kind of a natural brilliance of the unaware child empath, right? Because there wasn't anything you could do about it. Nobody understood, nobody taught you. And so you brilliantly, as a child, said, oh, if I'm all by myself in my room, then I feel great. And so keep telling, so how did you progress? Did you have to end up having to shut down these senses? Like, what did you do as you went along?
So as I look back, I remember I also was very sensitive to unseen energies. So I always sensed that there were spirits around me. I always had to sleep with a light on. And I just always had this internal fear that there was something or somebody with me. Especially in my grandmother's house. Like, there were certain places where it was stronger than others. I couldn't go into her basement. When I would sleep in her house, it always felt like someone was in the hallway. So I had a lot of fears around what I could not see, but that I could feel. And I was one of those kids that I couldn't get into bed. I always thought there was something under the bed, so I would leap like from 5 feet away onto the mattress. So there was always this unconscious or subconscious knowing that there were other energies around me. And, you know, the older I became, it's out there to be afraid of something we can't see, to be afraid of ghosts and spirits. And when my brother and I were older and able to have more of an adult, mature relationship, he also opened up and said that he was able to see and feel some of these energies that he used to tease me about. So as we were older, I did have, like in my 20s, it started to become more clear of what my gifts were, because my brother also had them.
Well, how did you get, so when you say it became more clear, what did you do? Like, then what happened?
So it was a fear for years. So what I saw my brother do is shut off his capacities. And I was like, okay, that makes it look easier. I'll be able to sleep through the night better if I too turn it off. And by turning it off, I mean, we would turn other stimuli on to block out what was going on. So even, you know, radio, TV, other noises, other distractions, so that what was there, I didn't have to see or look at or acknowledge. And as I grew older and then became more aware of what energy was, it actually got a little scarier at first. There was a gap from where I am now to when I started to become even more aware of what those spirits were. They had messages. That was, what do you mean they want to talk to me? And then I found some modalities and some tools that helped me interpret what those energies were, what they wanted, and to simply acknowledge they were a spirit like I was, just without a physical body. And the majority of them do not cause pain or harm. You know, they're all benevolent, the majority of them. And they simply either, one, this is what I've learned, because now I talk to them regularly, they either are not aware that they're dead, that they don't have a body, or they don't know how to find the next dimension where they're supposed to go. So I've become, in working as a teacher, as a preschool teacher, as that's how you and I know each other, I look at them all as children not having a knowledge of what to do next. So instead of going into fear that there's spirits in my room or spirits around me or in my house, I don't chase them away. I don't get out the sage. I talk to them. And I number one, I ask them what it is that, you know, if they have a message. And number two, I ask them, you know, are you aware that you don't have a body? Because you're here having this conversation with me. And the majority of the time, they're very stunned that they no longer have a physical form.
Wow. So
we then talk about what it is they do next.
Wow.
And so, and there's different, I teach different tools, because different tools, just like with a person with a body, certain tools work and others they'll resonate with something else. So I have a plethora of tools that I work with in order to help spirits go to their next stage of development.
Wow. So do you find that now you're able to actually help these spirits?
Oh, absolutely.
So I'm curious about this. So do you find that that these just spirits kind of come to you, or do you find that people who are, you know, physical being people come to you and say, I am experiencing this energy and I don't know what to do with it?
So what I've always found is, and have heard, that if you are this bright light, they're going to see you. So they have always found me ever since I was a little girl. My clients aren't people who have them and need to know what's going on. It's more about, this is more of my personal reality, and it's become easier to work with one of my favorite tools that I have And it's about becoming more aware of energy, as opposed to others might teach protection. Mine is actually the opposite, so that I can be more aware of what's there, so the communication with them is clear, more clear and specific. So I do what's called barriers down. It's from Access Consciousness. So I actually open up my awareness now to who's there and what's there, because then as they're trying to communicate with me, I can now hear them and I can help them without fear, and I can tune into them to figure out which tool would resonate better with them, just as if I would with a client with a physical body.
So how is this then now helping? So first of all, this is helping you not be scared.
Yes.
Right? Like that's the first.
Number one key. Yep.
But now how is that helping you help the next person?
So without barriers or the need to protect myself when I work with people, I am now more conscious and aware of others' energies.
Mm-hmm.
So I can help them much more specifically with what's going on. I can see, I can feel, I can direct them in a way that would be, that would work better with how they're used to. So without having to go through trial and error with people, I could read their energy and get a sense of which direction I need to take them in to help them feel better with what they're coming to me for. And it's all about, so what I talked about, I think my title that I used for your form to fill out is becoming an energy pro. So the more aware you are, not protected, the more aware you are of what's in front of you, what's around you, what's in you, you become more of a professional of how to work with it.
Wow.
Because
I love this so much, because I think your story represents what it's been like for so many people in so many different ways, even people who are not as like energy attuned as you, but it was this whole fear shutdown thing. And now, so I want you to go into this a little more about what does it mean to become an energy pro? Because I just think that's super cool, because it's not just like, okay, now I don't have to worry about it. It's that idea of how do I actually use this because it's our gift.
Right, it's the gift. So rather than it be something heavy, I look at it, I now perceive energies differently, not as a struggle or a challenge, but rather a way to help the person navigate out of it, really. And how it all started as far as being more aware of energies is I started to feel other people's energies in my own body. And I'm sure, that's a very typical empath, because we're all empaths to some degree. But when we start labeling ourselves as empaths, that's when highly sensitive people are actually feeling it in their own bodies. Because we're all empaths. So when I started doing my Reiki sessions with people, I started to get various pains in my body. And that was my body's way of reading what was bothering, what they were experiencing. So whether it was an old break in the hand, or they twisted their ankle a couple of years ago hiking, I would then feel that physically in my body. So rather than so what some people do, and a lot of healers do this, is they don't always realize they at then some point need to release that. And my choice was, now that I'm more sensitive to energy, I no longer have to feel it in my own body. I could now look at the client and just sense where they're experiencing pain. So I completely even have erased having to feel it at all in my own body, because I can now look at them and say, oh, I have a sense that, your ankle hurts, or, you're something or other.
So how did you do that, Darlene? Because I know some people who are working on that, like, oh, I'm feeling this other person's pain, and now it's in me. So Do you have a couple of tips you can give people about how to do that?
Yes. So what worked for me, what I found was the more I tried protecting myself from that. So there's some of the healers will teach, and I learned it too, to shield yourself, protect yourself, put yourself in a bubble. But what you're doing when you're doing that is you're contracting your body, even if it's just a little bit. So you have less control over the energies that are entering your body when you're contracted. So my key to everything is, before I start any kind of session, is instead of going into protection or thinking this client might have something that they're going to give me, I do barriers down, and then I'm aware of and conscious of everything in the room. So my body does not feel the need to have to take on the pain in order to support and help that other person that's with me. I give my body, and I give the environment, and I give the situation other opportunities to show me what else I can do and how else I can help them, rather than it just being my body is the only vehicle.
Right. Here's what I'm hearing, and tell me if I'm right, that by consciously saying I am aware,
that's it,
that you then become able to have more awareness without your body having to make you aware.
Yeah. Some people choose that their body does that. I choose that it doesn't, because it's more of a challenge for me to then have to, it's an extra step for me to have to get rid of that energy. So I'd rather go right to the perceiving of something without having to take it on. So I skip a step.
Well, I also think it's as we skill up in all of these other ways of knowing, because we weren't taught. This is one of the things I've been talking about a lot. We weren't taught to know and value and use sensitivities, awarenesses, intuition. We weren't taught that kind of knowing had value or was real. We just weren't taught that. So part of it is skilling up in trusting it and learning, how do I actually consciously become aware of what I was unconsciously aware of, in a sense, right?
It's definitely developing a trust of yourself,
Right.
as opposed to what we were told, at some other point, whether it was a teacher or just culture in general. Right. Oh, don't be so emotional. Oh, and be more practical. No, this is about tuning in and listening to your own body, your own awareness. Yeah. And also what happens, this is also a very important tool, because it helps with being an empath in the world in general, not just in, having clients, but if there's an overwhelming feeling or pain, so it's either emotional or physical, I ask, who does this belong to? Because so much of the time it's not even mine. So it's one of the first questions I ask my clients when they come in with something like anxiety or depression. We'll talk a little bit about their childhood. When you were growing up, was there someone in your family who had anxiety or depression? 99% of the time, yes. So the body not only picks up on the energies and also continues the pattern, but we will also mimic and continue the behavior that was modeled for us. So there's two components going on there when people are coming in with emotions like anxiety and depression.
Wow. It's such a paradigm shift.
It is.
Right? Because we're so pathologized around all this, that it's physical, it's an illness, has to be treated with drugs. And there's this whole paradigm shift that you're talking about, and other, energy healers are talking about, which is like, it's a whole different understanding of it, that it's not yours. And then it also allows people to not feel, we feel so bad about ourselves. That's what's wrong with me. And it turns out nothing.
Right. People make it their identity, because it takes over. If someone has an illness, whether it's physical or emotional, it truly takes over your whole life.
Mm-hmm.
And then just asking that one question, who does that really belong to? And if they're an empath, it pretty much belongs to everybody in the entire world. I mean, that's how sensitive some people are. They just take on the world on your shoulders. Literally, people do that.
So talk a little bit about how, I mean, obviously look, people will be able to get a hold of you and you can help them, but talk a little bit about what happens next once you realize it's not yours.
Well, people usually laugh. And once you do that, I then teach people how to be aware of it before it becomes their identity.
Mm-hmm.
So to be more aware and more conscious of energies that feel like they're not yours. So heavy. If you're starting to feel heavy in your body, I teach people a lot about body awareness. Mm-hmm. So when you're paying attention to what's going on in your body, you get a sense of something. It's almost like putting on a shirt that doesn't fit, or even this is a little closer. It's like putting on a necklace or a bracelet that just doesn't feel, no, that doesn't feel right. It's the same thing with these heavy emotions that people are experiencing and carrying around and thinking that it's theirs. It's like putting on a piece of jewelry that really doesn't belong to them.
And so is the work you do then helps the person, so to speak, take that piece of jewelry off, like helps them take it out? Like, is that part of what the work does, is help it take that out of a person's energy?
It starts by them becoming aware that they don't have to own and claim all of their emotions that are occurring within them, or even the body pain, because a lot of the body pain they're picking up from other people too. So the first step is awareness. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then the second step is using the body to practice, what isn't mine, what is mine, what can I get rid of? And the third step is then just telling the energy to, doing what you can, what's going to work for this person to dissipate that energy. And that's where the energy work comes in, as far as my work goes with people, is we clear that out using, whether it's Reiki or, intuitive energy healing that I do. And also some of my next evolving with my business is taking people outside so that they can release their energies into the earth. So even taking that next step. Then what I am all about is empowerment. So, okay, now you have these tools. Now you can use them on your own. You won't need someone throughout your day to remind you to say, who does this belong to? Is it mine? Where can I put it? How do I get rid of it? So a huge part of the work I do with people is to, show them how to be aware, what to do when they acknowledge that, and then give them the tools to take that next step so they can take care of themselves.
So exciting and so liberating. I women I work with were like, once they knew this, it was like, whoa. And part of it is like, you have a whole new story, that awareness, that step of awareness. It's like all of a sudden you have a whole new story that you're telling yourself about what your experience is and was. And that, like you said, that's like such a powerful first step, because that it's all of a sudden all this blame and judgment and all that stuff that we have lifts off. And then the next big work is what you're talking about, which are, what are the tools that, like what I said in the tagline for this whole thing is, what are the tools that help you turn these sensitivities into your strengths? So that's the whole step of empowerment. Okay, so say a little more about where, just before we came on live, you were talking about kind of this next idea of also not just taking people outside in nature, which is truly important for every highly sensitive person, empath, and truly for every person. But for those of us who have this, like I always had to go outside in nature. In fact, my kids would say to me, "Mom, go for your walk." Then I would come back and I'd be a much nicer mommy. But I didn't know why. I just knew I had to.
Right.
I just knew I had to go out in nature always, my whole life.
Right.
And then I would be okay again.
And that's where we regenerate. That's where our body, we're a part of nature. We often think of ourselves as separate from, but if we go to nature, our body will naturally return to its own rhythm, as opposed to when we're in culture, in society, we're around our technology, our laptops, we constantly have our cell phones with us. There's all this electromagnetic charge that now is part of our everyday life. And that, if you think about it, in fact, the walls of people who work in offices and in buildings, we're cut off from nature. We're cut off from the natural healing energies that the planet and earth provide our bodies, which our bodies need that to connect to that natural rhythm of nature. And so our lives now have become farther and farther away from the natural rhythm of the body. So when we go out into nature, oh, this is what it's supposed to be like.
Right. Duh. Right. I know. It's
the walls cut us off from the buildings that we now live in. Yes, it's wonderful shelter in times of weather, but it's actually, if it's too much or if we don't have the balance, we're completely cutting ourselves off from our natural healing that our bodies want. Yeah, our bodies
it's
need.
so funny because it's so true and so obvious when you say it like that, and we can become so oblivious,
The reciprocity that we have just with trees alone is essential to daily life. And think about how many people don't ever go outside. They go from their car to the building to the house, and people are not receiving the reciprocity that's out there that we actually need.
Yeah.
So if we're empaths taking on all of these other energies, that's the first place we need to go to release what's not ours. And what I learned in my research as I continue this path and how to support people, the bottom of our feet have the kidney meridian. And that's where we actually can release all of the toxicity and all of the energies that aren't ours. We release that from the bottom of our feet into the earth. That's what grounding really is, if you want to look at it scientifically.
Wow.
The kidney meridian at the bottom of the feet. So if you're an empath, I strongly recommend that you do that daily, because it's going to release everything that's in the body that shouldn't be there, that's disrupting the natural flow of life force energy. Go out, release the energy, and then breathe up and in the energies that the earth is.
Do you have to do that? You mean put your bare feet on the earth?
It certainly helps, makes a difference. Either works, because so if you also think about how the mind thinks, we can make the mind and the body think where something is happening, like through imagination and meditation. So you can do it even inside with your shoes on, because the body, if we have a good enough vision in our head that we're actually outside and barefoot, the body will think that we are. However, everything that, if we can do it for real, that's even more powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm so with you on this. I used to joke all the time. I'm like the puppy. I just want to go outside. And I know you have amazing dogs that you're connected with, and they always want to go outside, right?
Your cat, Hector.
Yes, and I have my famous kitty cat who it's hilarious. You'll see him on my Facebook page. We used to take him out on a leash when he was a tiny baby, and then he doesn't do that anymore, but he still wants you to walk outside with him every morning. So I'm like, okay, fine, I'm down with that. So he makes me go outside, and I'm thinking, oh no, what are we gonna do in the winter? But for now,
It works for now, yeah.
for now it's fun. And it's fun to let yourself feel this lightness of being, like the funniness of our pets, the beauty of nature, the colors. And, I hope that people watching are feeling inspired to give value to that time in nature.
Right. And not only nature, but to step out of the daily routine, the daily grind. So if you're inside in the office, or even if you have a home office and you're in your house, you still need to switch it up a little bit and change environment. If you're looking for change and more joy and more connection to your life.
Say a little more about that, because this is kind of a budding vision of yours, is this kind of next step of changing environment. So say a little more about that.
Right. So when we are stuck in a holding pattern, especially if we're empaths, we just continue taking on and not growing because we're getting so heavy with everybody's stuff. So my next experience that I'll be creating for clients is actually 2 steps, taking them out of their daily routine by doing some healing out in nature. And then my bigger vision that I received during meditation is to actually take people out of culture. Because if you go to a different culture other than your own, you have to be more aware of your surroundings. So it's not just about driving around in the same town you live in. You already know where to go, or you're at the same job every day. You know what you're going to do. You have to literally take yourself out of the routine. If you're wanting change in your life, if you're wanting expansion and growth and healing, and wanting to be more aware of energies and how to be in control of that as an empath, go outside of your culture as practice, and then you're going to become aware of everything around you. So say someone who's never been to New York City, you have to be super hyper aware of what's going on. You have to, whether it's transit or, the buildings, where to eat, you become more alive. So my next chapter is going to be working with people around taking them out of culture into a different environment completely.
Super cool. I love this all so much, Darlene. It's so exciting, and there's so much opening up for people. So tell people a little bit about your free gift, which will bring them into your world and then give them a chance to connect with you. And also people will be able to find you in the Facebook group for the show, but tell them a little bit about your free gift.
So the free gift is the beginning. It's where to start if you are an empath and you may be having challenges in your life as far as the heaviness and the taking on and not knowing what to do with it. I have 3 videos that are available to you, 3 really important tools that started me on my path of more awareness, so that now I'm an energy pro and I have more control of what I'm seeing. So these tools will help you get started with stepping out of the fear of being an empath, stepping out of the what may be a negative label of being an empath, because a lot of people think it's a curse. So the 3 tools that I have available for everybody who go to the link, it's to shift and change all of that. You become more enlightened and more empowered with what your gifts are, and then how to use them and play with them.
Love that so much. So click the link below the interview, put your name and your email in that box, and you're going to get these videos. And then you'll also have a way to kind of follow up and connect with Darlene in case you really want to take a next step. And I think this is a big part of this work, is opening up the possibilities to take a first step and then another step. And that's going to lead you to what Darlene's calling being an energy pro, which I think is what's being asked of us. I love that, to be empowered with these gifts rather than seeing them as like a liability. So, all right. So just as we're getting ready to wrap up, Darlene, maybe leave us with a couple of last thoughts, inspiration.
A couple of last thoughts. Trust your own energy. So so my body's even telling me, go with what brings you joy. So the energy that we are attuned to, that our bodies, our beings want, this is pretty much everybody. So that idea of being joy, bliss, we have to find that sometimes by going outside of ourselves. So always be on the search for what brings your body joy, the goosebumps, that feeling of bliss. That is our divine nature, that sense of bliss. So if that's your goal, and if anything feels differently than that, go in another direction and go find the bliss. That's what I recommend.
All right, I completely love that advice. And we forget about it. These are the things, they seem so obvious, but we don't do them. So that's the whole point of this series, is to bring this, like you're talking the whole time about awareness, raising our awareness. So Darlene, thank you so much fun. Darlene and I have known each other for years. She was my daughter's preschool teacher for a while. We even went together to do Reiki with Darlene a long time ago. And so that's also the joy of our connections with each other, and trusting those and growing our visions. And honestly, people, the world needs your gifts. And that's part of what's happening now, is our world needs us to bring these gifts forward. So Darlene, thank you so much.
Thank you. It was blissful.
See, there we go, right? We're going in the right direction.
That's right.
And as I say to everybody in farewell, remember to go out in the world, share your story, live your purpose, and be a blessing. Bye, folks.
Bye. Thank you.